Today we're going to be experimenting with poor man's fiberglass. Now, essentially, it is similar to rich man's fiberglass or regular fiberglass cloth and epoxy, but you use a cheap drop cloth exterior wood glue to kind of lay it down. Afterwards, you can go over it with some sort of weather-resistant paint that helps seal everything in and make it waterproof. Now, the reason I'm experimenting with this is because I have a project that I'm going to start working on, and I need a way to weatherproof it without spending a bunch of money. I don't know if it's going to be all that much cheaper than regular fiberglass, but the goal is to see if it's even worth messing with. Now, this is just regular CD plywood, the cheap stuff. You can see all these voids. The difference between CD and AC plywood is that AC is filled and sanded. If this poor man's fiberglass seals it pretty well, then I can probably get away with going over with some cheap filler and then doing it that way. So that's kind of what we're testing here. Alright, so I've got all my holes drilled and everything. Now how I'm going to do this is I'm going to have one that is a drop cloth and glue only. So it's going to be one layer of glue, drop cloth, and then another layer of glue on top. I'm going to have another one that's the same thing, except it's going to be undercoated. Then I'm going to have another one that is just undercoated. Obviously the hole is not going to get sealed up. Now opening up this canvas, something I noticed is that there's a plastic membrane. I think that's going to have to come off for the poor man's fiberglass. So in the future, if I decide to use this, I will need to look for a cheaper one that doesn't have this plastic on it. Alright, so I have tried for about, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 minutes, and I can't even get this thing to come up a little bit without it ripping. So I'm going to adjust the plan a little bit. I'm going to glue this canvas side down onto the wood, and then I will glue over it, squeegee, and then glue over it just to kind of seal that in. This plastic should help me with sealing everything in. Alright, so I'm just applying a generous amount of this wood glue, and then I'll spread it out with the brush, and then we'll get this laid. Now, this is what I was talking about. You can see these little spots that look dry. There was glue there. I don't know if it's kind of pooling itself into different pools or if it's actually soaking through. It's a little bit hard to tell from right now. Alright, so I'm going to prep the test specimen with just the undercoating. The issue that I see with this immediately is that if I were to do this on the entire project, I would need to either have all those holes filled, or I would need to get really good quality sanded plywood, or I could get chipboard, which I would rather not use because once water gets into that, it doesn't really hold up all that well. So I'm going to start spraying this, and we'll see how good I can get that coat. also do this in a well-ventilated area. It's got all sorts of yummy chemicals in it, so just so happens that I've got a 4-stage fume extractor in here, so I'm going to let that dry. Hopefully those other specimens dry, and then I can get this on the PMF sample that I was going to use this on. We'll see how that goes. So this is how these 3 turned out. I put a little piece of paper towel underneath, put a little water right where the hole is. That's where the hole is, right there. And we'll see if that gets down into the paper towel. This one was kind of cracking right there, so we'll see how well it seals up. The edges are bonded pretty good on both of these. Kind of like the way this one turned out best though. So yeah, we'll let it run for a little bit. Alright, so I did go ahead and add some water to the surfaces of all of these. This one's hard to see because it's so blending in. But yeah, I'm just going to let these sit for about, I don't know, 3-4 hours and see what the water does. Alright, so I tested these with, this is just the painted one, and this is the PMF with paint over it, and this is just the PMF. And I noticed that the PMF got very, very stiff. That is where the hole is, and you can hear how it's basically like a rock. This right here kind of stained with a little bit of water. I think I put the water on too early. And this one did a little bit as well, but it's hard to tell, at least on camera. Now on these samples, I put a paper towel underneath, and I put water in the divot and somewhere over where it's flat. No water leaked through, either on this poor man's fiberglass or this one with the paint over it. So I'm pretty happy with both of these, actually. The reason that I want to do the poor man's fiberglass over, or rather put paint on the poor man's fiberglass, is just for sealing corners, because the project that I'm working on for this experiment is to build a camper, and this is going to help me seal the corners because I'm just building it out of wood. I do need to find a different medium. This is very glued down and very stiff, so it's doing really well, but I'm not entirely sure that the membrane matters as much as the glue and the paint over it.